Well, I'm sorry to start out with the injury question, but
Yeah.
clearly you have to ask about Caleb and how he's doing, and certainly the other guys, offensive linemen, didn't start, that kind of stuff.
Yeah. So Caleb's situation is, Caleb had surgery Sunday. Will be out for a while. I do think he's got the ability to get him back at some point this football season, which is honestly the best news that we could have heard on Saturday is what we got. And so lower leg injury, I do think he'll be back though here at some point later in the season, or have the opportunity to get himself back later in the season based on recovery. But obviously, that's a tough blow for Caleb just because he's done such a great job. But I think the great news is that, from what it could have been and what it was, I think there's a lot of positivity around it too. And obviously there's light at the end of the tunnel that, he can make it back this fall. Other than that, I think everything else we're kind of like a little bit week to week, day to day on some guys. Offensive line wise, that situation, I think the one positivity there is, maybe the possibility to get some guys back on that offensive line this week. Both guys that didn't play in the game Saturday practice today. That doesn't mean that they're going to play, but I think they're at least trending in that direction. And then, really everywhere else, pretty good spot. We talked about Will McLaughlin last time. I think, Will's still a while out right now for him to get back on our football team and get back into playing. But, we do expect him back here sooner than later as well.
And when you grade that linebackers group that suddenly becomes far less experienced with Will, and we most experienced guy, and knowing what Caleb can do, how did you rate it against North Dakota? And then what positives did you see that you can build a good rotation there still with those guys out?
Yeah, I would say there's still a lot of experience in that room. You got Jack Sadowski started every game last year. Cooper Evil played a ton of football for us as a young freshman a year ago. Really from our standpoint, there's guys that have played a lot of football there that we need to continue to play. John Klosterman played really good in the football game, played a lot for us last year in a lot of different situations. So I still look at that group, and even from the game itself, I thought as the game went, that group settled in. We tried to be aggressive with that group early on and do some different things, but I think as the group went in, Zach Lovett played a pretty good football game as the game went on, and so I think they just settled in and played what their roles were. But again, youth, but I'm really optimistic about what that group's got the ability to be and certainly continue to become. But you never like to lose players. But again, that's a room that we thought was really talented from top to bottom. We thought had a really good fall camp, and the depth of that room will be tested a little bit early on. But I think we all have great confidence in that room.
Rocco, having experience against Iowa's defense, how valuable is that as you have seen in the past with some of your quarterbacks who've played against them multiple times? Yeah,
I think the biggest thing for Rocco in general is having at least a baseline understanding, because you're going against our defense in all of fall camp, to making a big shift to certainly a different style of defense. And I think that shift is something that having that year of experience and seeing not only that defense from Iowa, but seeing it from multiple different teams we played last year, it certainly allows you to have confidence to know, man, what are my answers? What are the challenges this defense can present? How do I do a great job taking care of the football? What do all those things look like and feel like? So I definitely see that as a positive, again, at that position where you're handling the football at all times. I think critically important.
Of course, protecting the football is really important against every team, but especially Iowa. Aside from that, having so much experience coaching against Ferentz and Parker, what is the biggest key to finding success against their defense for your entire offensive unit?
No, I think you said it first, right? It's protecting the football. I think what they do such an incredible job of is, they know who they are defensively. They have answers to, when it gets put in conflict, how to create an answer to, the conflict that gets created. And that comes with great experience and honestly great fundamental and detail. And I would say that's the most impressive thing of what they do defensively. And the thing that can get you caught and really make you pay the most is the ability to turn the ball over. And I think when you can do a great job at least taking care of the football, it has to start there. Scott.
Hey. These games often serve as a barometer for both programs it's kind of the curtain raiser to the conference season. Other than the result, what are you looking for to get out of your team on Saturday to help take that next step as a team as you go through the season?
Yeah, I think twofold for me. Number one, it's our first road game of the year, which I think is, if we want to be the team that we want to be at the end of the football season, you got to win on the road. And, I think we started to learn how to, as a young football team last year, by the midpoint to the end of the season, we really learned what it takes and what are some of the things that you have to do when you play on the road that are different than playing at home. So, you're going into a hostile environment. Obviously, you're going into a game that has a lot of hype around it from the outside. And, the ability to block that out and the ability to understand that to win on the road, it's going to be about those precision and detail moments. It's going to be about, playing our style of football. And can you do that against a really good opponent? And I think that's the beauty of playing a big game like this early in the football season, because you hope you're continuing to play big football games as the season goes on. And, the ability to be able to teach and learn and grow from that, I think it's huge. And like I said, I think so many of our young guys got that experience a little bit in this game a year ago to understand what that feels like, what this game can bring to the table, and how do you navigate it. What did we do really well last year? What didn't we do well? And then obviously, how do we move ourselves forward?
My other question about this is, I know it's a tough week to think globally,
Mm-hmm.
pretty narrow right now, but globally, this game matters a lot, not only to both programs, but to the conferences. We're in a new era for the college football playoff. These games will help you, your conference, if you win, or vice versa. Did that ever generate any kind of discussion in the off season among the coaches? And do you have any thoughts about that from just kind of a global perspective?
Yeah, I probably would be a bad soundbite on that, just because I really don't. This game, I think, just means so much in general to the state of Iowa and the university and all, both universities, both fan bases, both alumni groups, that it's really hard to think global on a week like this. I think it's, and it's the second game of the football season. You're still really early in the season, and you're trying to build and grow your football team on top of all that. So, I think it's hard for me to look like that. I think I look at it as more 1 week at a time, one game at a time, one opportunity at a time, and how do we keep moving ourselves forward? Because ultimately, no matter what happens, you need to be your best in October, November, and December if you want to have the ability to be a playoff football team, a championship football team. And, this is a great opportunity to grow forward in week 2 of the football season.
Hey, Matt, I think you referenced 2022 briefly, but I know that was a weird game, rain, all that junk, but what do you remember about specifically being able to navigate that specific environment in Campbell?
Yeah, I still don't think we did a great job. If you go back to that game, we turned the ball over 3 times. We turned it twice over inside the 10-yard line. But again, that's football. And what I think the biggest thing that we did a great job navigating in that game, and, you look back to the road games last year, is when adversity hit, we had the ability to kind of persevere through it. And if you look at that game, man, you look at us on the road last year, and I think our ability to play good football on the road was ability to kind of stay laser focused on the situation and the moment at hand and not get lost in the positive or the negative that just occurred. So, when I look back to it, I think those were the big things in that game that I would take. And again, that's what it takes to win on the road. You can get lost in some of the other things, I think, really, really fast. And I think you got to zoom focus in on what's important and what matters and being in the moment.
Hey, Coach, what's the status of Will McLaughlin?
Yeah, just talked about it. Will be out for a little bit. He's a guy that's probably more week to week than he is anything else, but we hope to get him back here sooner than later. But obviously we love Will and hopefully get him back on the football field soon. Yep.
Brazina's the one guy you haven't said.
Yeah, so I think Kale is back, and so he was probably a game time decision last week from our end of it. We dressed him out. He went through warm-ups, but we didn't pull the trigger. Just didn't feel like he was ready yet. So obviously that room gets a little bit of you have a tough blow, but to be able to get a good lift in there as well, I think that's a huge positive for us.
You've talked about the linebackers, but how do they kind of weather? You're down 2 starting caliber linebackers. Brazina's probably a third that now maybe be playing his first game.
Yeah.
Just how do they push forward through that?
Yeah, and let's remember we had Jacob Ellis back, right? And we didn't have him, and he's a guy that's played a lot of football, and Jacob played a really good game for us on last Saturday. So, I think again you're kind of teeter-tottering of, man, you missed a couple guys, and yet, man, you had some guys that really in fall camp you thought it was a really heated race across the board, and you thought there was great depth getting created. And so, I think everybody's got to step up and do their role, and where does it stress you in some other areas? You got to find that out. But I don't really feel like it yes, we're going to miss those guys. Those guys are great players, and we think the world of them. But, man, we feel like we've got guys that are ready to go play, and I think those guys are really confident, and we're excited for those guys to go in there and pick it up. And like I said, a lot of those guys have played a lot of football. Zach Lovett's played a lot of football. Jack Sadowski's played. Coops played. Getting Jacob Ellis back was huge. John Klosterman, man, sack and a deflection for an interception in the game. So, guys stood up on Saturday and made some big plays. So I think that's just part of football and kind of part of where you're at, especially early in the football season. I think you have to navigate those things.
Would Moberly show you guys in the fall to be the guy behind Rocco?
Yeah, and I'd still say that's a little bit of an open race, but I'd just say with Connor's situation, Connor he's got great confidence, and I think you see what he's done physically. If you covered him, a year ago in high school, he kind of was like, man, came in here even in the spring as this skinny young man, and man, he put on 20 pounds from the time spring ball ended till the time we started fall camp, and I thought that really helped him, and I think probably helped his confidence too, but he's got great arm strength. He's really got great mobility. He's a really competitive kid, and you saw with the success he had in high school, I think he brought that confidence in here, and is certainly it's been fun to watch his growth through fall camp. I am a really talented young guy, and we're excited for him to continue to grow forward.
Hey, Matt, you touched on this a little bit ago, the advantages of having this matchup so early in the season. I'm curious, though, what are the advantages for you guys as a coaching staff from an evaluation standpoint, as you still try to solidify guys in certain positions and as you kind of gear up for conference play?
Yeah, I don't know if it's an advantage or a disadvantage to have this game early in the season, but it's unique, right? And I think that's one of the things that, when you look at that, what you just said is where the uniqueness comes from. You're still forming the identity for this year's team, and I think one of the great tests of this game is you're forming it against a really good opponent, and you're that with a lot on the line, and obviously, man, a big game atmosphere that means a lot to a lot of people. So I think that's the thing that's unique in its own right, but I think it's also, I think you learn a lot about yourself post this game. Who are you? Where are you at in the growth process, and what are those areas you need to continue to pound away with and grow forward? And uniquely in our schedule this year, we get a bye week after this, so it's almost a great opportunity for us to, man, have a great understanding of where we are, and then, man, how do we continue to make the right decisions to move our team where we need to be?
As you got into the tape from Saturday and the rushing game that North Dakota was able to sustain, what did you kind of take away from that, and what can maybe be cleaned up in a kind of a week-to-week thing where you're going into Iowa?
Yeah, I just say, I think we tried to do a lot early on. Coach Haycock would probably tell you the same thing, and then the reality of, we've got to be better. We got to be more physical at the point of attack. I thought that happened after, the midpoint of the game, and I thought that we were able to clean some things up, especially at halftime, and made some really good adjustments. But I think the reality of it is those two things. Probably tried to do a little too much early, and needed to be more physical at the point of attack in the first half of the football game.
Obviously, Coach, you now have a couple days to debrief this North Dakota game. What have you, I know this new offensive coordinator, Coach Mauser now, what have you seen to kind of take away from his offensive play calling from Saturday that could potentially help for not just Iowa, for the rest of the season? Well,
I think the great thing about the game, honestly, is and we talk so much here about situational football. You got them all, right? You got 2-minute drill at the end of half on both sides of the ball. You got a 4-minute situation at the end of the game. You got red zone offense, coming out offense, third down. And, you look at what we did offensively, and I thought there were a lot of really positive things. I thought we were able to handle situational football really well. We weren't perfect. There's a lot of great teaching tape that we can take from Saturday and really have tried to dive in the last 2 days of, man, what can we learn about ourselves, and how do we grade ourselves, and how can we move ourselves forward? So I think we're really blessed because we got so many great situations that came out of that game on both sides of the ball that, I thought it was huge. But I thought Coach Mouse did a great job. I think that whole offensive staff, we had a great plan, and I thought there was really solid execution across the board.
Earlier, you talked about how important this game is to both universities, people across the state. With everything changing in college football so much this season, how important is it for this game to remain part of the college football calendar every year?
Well, I would just say, our world is so unique in college football, and I still believe at some point as we bring balance back to the world that we are living in, rivalries, in-state rivalries, neighboring rivalries, it makes college football really special. And I still believe that those things are major factors in high-level college athletics. I think people want to watch rival football games and great games. And so, I think that's what this game has certainly stood for over the test of time, and I think it's what makes this game really special. And, I think the more you look at even what you watched this past weekend, everybody's tuning into the big games and the games that mean a lot and have a lot on the line, and I think that's what makes it really unique. And again, it's been fortunate to build our program to the point where we can make this game important and make it a big football game.
How unique is it that this is a big rivalry game between two schools in the same state, but they're not in the same conference? Like, does that add extra meaning to it for fans, for you as a coach and a program leader?
I just think it's unique. Like I said, I think most rival games like this are played the last game of the season, and this is not that situation. You go on from this, and the reality, and it kind of goes back to Scott's question of the end of the season, you're still got to go and you got to win your conference, and that's really what matters at the end of the day. But I think having a game like this early, having a big game, preparing for those things, what you can learn about yourself and how you can take it and the momentum you can create for yourself, those are huge. Those are huge wins. And so I think you look at it as such a great opportunity to really build your team and continue to build yourself forward. So I think from all those things, that's what makes this game really unique and different.
Take one more down here.
Members of this offense have made it known that they want to be aggressive and they want to keep pushing the effort. What's sort of the challenge or balance in continuing to do that while also, keeping an eye on a defense that likes to create a lot of chaos?
Boy, I think, that is a fine line, and it's a great balance. I think when you look at a game like this, and being aggressive is one thing, being intelligent is the most important thing. And, there's ways to be aggressive with intelligence along the way. And, in all honesty, both sides of the football, you're going to have to do a great job of that. That'll be a huge impact on this game, in my opinion. So I think that's a great question.
Thank you, Coach.
All right, guys. Thank you, guys.